Yeah, I know. Double booking everything and.
I know, you said so.
Yeah. Did you get that?
We are our first in person, but also remote, so our hybrid meeting. Like everybody, our first chapter meeting hybrid. So welcome everybody. Vivian New, past president. hybrid at this point. Oh, that's. I wonder if they have the number in. What? Well, we got that going. Do you want to? Yeah. You're back? Oh, you're back. Okay, thank you. Thank you for being back, remote people. Down Clara Valley, and we are both in all of Santa Clara County, Southern San Mateo County, and Stanislaus County. And our mission is to save California's native plants and habitats. If you are not currently a CNPS member, we would love to have you join us. Or when you become a member, you get 2 wonderful journals, Artemisia and Clara. You get our chapter newsletter, which is full of cool, interesting bits of information about our chapter. We're getting there. I guess remote people can at least hear what's going on. I will continue with this spiel. And so if you are not a current member, go to cnps.org/join and you can sign up online. Oh no, here, let me sign in this. Bear with us, people. Yeah. We're still trying to get the slides back up for you, but I'm just going to talk through them for the people who are here. We have a lot of events coming up. I just have a little sample of them here. And this is actually, this one is this particular laptop. That's not online. Yes. Sorry. We're still trying to get. You're really not close to this week. You want to share and re-share again? What? Well, we're actually just trying to get locked on. Yeah. The only way I can do it is just if you have the camera, you can point it to the projector. Oh, that's true. Can I do that? I don't know. All right, let's. How do we do this thing? Here we go. All right. No. Okay, let me talk through these slides and then because Arvin has a thing that doesn't require it. All right, so I just wanted to give you a little smattering of just one the events most of these join our at Lake that already signed up. You could be going on a fight walk tomorrow, or on Sunday you could be joining Armand and Ashok again and Morgan Hill for a walk with the plant community about the plant community in South. So there's room in the Broadway walk? What? There's room in the Broadway? No, I'm saying these things are full. I'm just giving you an idea. If you are a chapter, why you don't have to be a chapter member. If you just want to be one of the CNPS activities, this is what we have going on just in the coming week. And photo group is on Friday. So if you enjoy looking at pretty pictures, or if you want to share pretty pictures, that is all online. So you can just get on our meetup group. That information is down there at the bottom, and it'll show you how to do that. Okay. Okay. And we have our big spring stuff is coming up. The Growing Native Garden Tours, the first weekend in April. It is in person, of course. We are not doing virtual gardens this year. South is on April 1st, April Fool's Day. North is on Sunday. Register at gmgt.org. And we do that with the Master Gardeners. We are going to have our wildflower show again this year. Woohoo. It is going to be back at West Valley College. We're very, very excited about that. Our keynote speaker is Mary Ellen Hannibal, who is author of the book Citizen Scientist. Our theme this year is climate change. What can we do? There is a lot that is going on at the Wildflower Show. So you can go to cnps.scb.org and learn all about it. This is not exactly a CNPS, but we are very closely tied with Edgewood. Edgewood is actually part of the reason our chapter exists. And the spring wildflower walks are about to start in March. And there's several of us in the room who are Edgewood docents and will be leading those walks as well as many other people. It's a lot of fun. Just go to friendsofedgewood.eventbrite.com where you can sign up for walk. If you've done them before, it's no longer the drop-in on Saturdays. You actually get to sign up. And now we have them multiple days of the week, so there's a lot more choices about when you can take your walk. If you are not already on our news mailing list, I highly recommend that you join, because that way you get a weekly reminder of all the things that are coming up in the week. Our Priya, our vice president, is the one who sends out those announcements. Thank you, Priya. And finally, for those of you who are remote, I'm so sorry you can't see this slide, but it's just reminding you to please mute your microphones. If you have any questions, type them into chat. We'll be watching and we'll ask the speaker. We hope to finish by 9, but that's a hope. We don't guarantee that. And this is on YouTube right now and will be available later. Before I go to the next slide, actually, I'm going to turn it over to Arvind. And Judy, if you want to make that work. Arvind, and you are up.
So it's coming on now the hour.
Yes, and if you want to use this, it'll send the mic. Or there's actually another mic over here. Or you can speak very loudly, just the. Yeah, it's the. Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming out. And
I would go by that. I don't know. Is the hour working as a microphone?
Yes, the hour.
we'll check. You
You know, just stand over here.
can you hear me in the back?
But it's also from a video standpoint.
I'm getting it sort of. So go stand by the hour over there. Yeah, there you go.
Perfect. And now they can see.
Can you hear me now? Okay. First of all, I just want to thank all the volunteers who've made this meeting possible. And this is the first time. This is the first time that we are trying to do an in-person meeting as well as do it live. And if there's some glitches, please bear with us and we will get them right next time. My name is Arvind Kumar, and together with Priya, we chair the Volunteer Recognition Committee in the chapter. And I want to tell you about the Outstanding Volunteer Award that the committee gives every year. It recognizes a member for a significant and sustained contribution to the conservation of native plants and to the chapter's mission. This is the highest recognition our chapter gives to any member. And it's my great honor to announce that the recipient of the Outstanding Volunteer Award for 2022 is Georgia Stigl. When I joined the chapter, Georgia was president, so my history of the chapter begins with that. But Georgia joined the chapter in the late 80s, started volunteering at Edgewood in 96, that Ken will remember, under the leadership of Ken Hines. She then served as recording secretary, vice president, president, chapter council delegate, officer at large, and to this day holds the membership outreach chair. So in total, she has logged over 23 years as a chapter board member, and 10 of those as a chapter officer. been a regular presence at plant sales and wildflower shows. I'm sure you remember her. She's volunteered for the Going Native Garden Tour for many years with the late Sally Casey. At their lovely property in the Santa Cruz Mountains, Georgia and Bill have personally hosted numerous CNPS board retreats and potlucks. Within the chapter, Georgia has been a champion of process, of improvements that make things go easier the next time around. She's a big believer of that. Her efforts have made the chapter into an effective, functional, and welcoming organization. She's been the go-to person for me for consultation, communication, conflict resolution, and problem solving. She exudes warmth and hospitality, and usually the first to say hello. Thanks. Georgia, we thank you for the years of service, accomplishments, and plain old conviviality. Chapter is a better place because of you. The members you've recruited and mentored continue to be inspired by your example. We thank you.
Yeah, so this way over here, because I actually want people to be able to see Georgia.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Arvind. And thank you, organizers tonight, for doing all of this. I can't hear Vivian, but I can see that she's talking.
Say, if you wouldn't mind saying a few words, because
Yeah.
now you're up on the big screen, everybody can see you.
Okay, very good. I want to show off my certificate, for which I am very, very grateful to everybody and to putting this together. I can't say enough how much CNPS has done and does for me. I can't possibly begin to give back at the level of the benefit that I've received being a member and a volunteer, but I'm sure going to try my best to keep on and working with all of you. It's just an absolute honor and a pleasure, and I'm very, very grateful. And I can't wait to see everybody in person. I'm sorry we couldn't be there tonight, but we will be showing up for events and whatnot in the spring and going forward. So thank you very, very much, everybody. I'm really, really grateful.
You're not in Zoom yet?
You want me to use my computer?
I'm actually thinking we could maybe like just use mine while I'm not here.
Can you guys?
Oh, I don't have, oh wait, you have it on, all right. We have so many backups here.
For now, you have to make sure you start the hour.
So while they work on the technical issues, I have some more information to share. So if anybody volunteers at
Oh,
Lake Cunningham
Arvind.
tomorrow,
Here, talk to
if
them.
anyone volunteers at Lake Cunningham tomorrow, we are going to, they're going to get some wildflower seed packets courtesy of Jennifer. Thank you. There's a field trip on Sunday at Coyote Valley Open Space that's all filled up. But there's another one that's going to happen the following Sunday, February 26th. So if anyone is interested, try for February 26th. Same place, same theme. It's Plant Communities of the South Bay. Thank you.
What? Do you have your stick, with your,
Oh, I can make one then.
oh, sorry. So while we're still fiddling, I hope everybody had a chance to visit Jennifer and Grace. Is that great? Great. Back here, so we have a new program in our chapter called Wildflower Ambassadors. And they are doing community outreach, giving free seeds out. They are basically, we're trying, as a chapter, actually, they are our chapter's ambassadors, going out there to spread the word, to get people to grow more natives. And one of the things we're doing though, is we're giving out lots of free seed packets to make it super easy for people to take a dip into native plant gardening.
Over 1,000 to date of these have gone out.
So for those of you remote who might not have heard what Jennifer said, the Wildflower Ambassadors have given out over 1,000 seed packets already. So they are really,
Join us.
yes, and if you want to join, we welcome anybody and everybody who might be interested in becoming a Wildflower Ambassador. We actually have a field trip for Wildflower Ambassadors coming up next Saturday. It's on our website. So if you go to our website, cnps-scv/WFA, and you can find out all about it and join, or you could just go and talk to Jennifer and Grace back there. For those of you who are in the room, as opposed to those of you who are remote, go to our website. You can't get on. All right, let's see if we can make this work then. Except I gotta wait for Dee to. Oh, man.
This worked great on the test we did.
Yes, we did. Judy and Ray and I came earlier this week and we thought we had tested all the crucial pieces. And
It seems to me this camera is pointing there. Why don't we just point the owl to the screen? The back camera.
Oh, I see what you're saying is that, well, actually, you want to try to put up now that it's closer, maybe the setup might work. We'll see.
I'm not connected to Zoom.
No, you don't have to be. We're actually just going to use, if you act as the broadcast to that, let's see if we can make that work.
Well, I got the presentation. Yay. But that's not the issue. Don't need it, right?
What?
You don't need it.
You don't need it. Well, keep on going. Don't stop. Because if we can make that work.
Good thing we have cookies.
Yes, thank you. Oh, yes, thank you, Vicky, hospitality chair, for feeding us.
Okay, I'm gonna try one more time to get it. I know.
All right.
Look at that, I'm in.
Oh, yeah. All right, well, maybe it'll actually be straightforward. Don't wanna.
Okay, but where's the?
There's Jenny.
Microphone?
Yeah.
Can you hear?
So I'm showing.
All right.
All right, Dee, you want to cover Ken or whoever is,
All right, I think we're gonna try the original plan. Let's see.
we'll try.
All right, I'm gonna move that poster.
Okay, we know
And
Ken can be heard through.
oh, we should have done an intro for Ken. You want to introduce Ken? Because I don't think everybody knows who Ken is.
Okay, can everybody hear me then? Online? Georgia, okay, good.
They're all muted.
The sound is okay now. Who knows what's going on anymore? We have so many devices here, you guys.
You want to share your slide? Just make sure that's working.
Okay, I want to introduce Ken first of all. So, I'm Judy Fennerty. I'm helping Vivian today. So I want to introduce Ken Himes. We didn't plan this introduction because somehow we were not thinking about that. But Ken has been a member of our chapter since, I don't remember, early 80s, mid 80s. He was a member of the San Francisco Bay chapter first, if I'm not mistaken, before there was Well, we started Santa Clara Valley chapter in 72. So,
72, but I was living up that area.
oh, he was living up that area. Okay. And so Ken has been active in our chapter since the mid-80s at Edgewood Park as a chapter president, vice president, field trip chair, wildflower show, chair or participant, I'm not sure. Of course, decades of working at Edgewood Park as a leader and a docent and responsible for a lot of the protection and appreciation and restoration of Edgewood. A field trip chair, led hundreds of field trips, and in 2006, the chapter nominated Ken as a CMPS fellow, which is the highest volunteer award that you can get in CMPS, and so Ken's been getting a couple free dinners since then, but it recognizes his wonderful all the education and inspiration he's given to us all over the many decades of his work. Anyone else want to add anything about that right now? But anyway, we're very excited about this presentation, which Ken first presented at our 50th anniversary in October, 50th chapter anniversary, and it's on slides, those little square pieces of film that some of us have in our closets.
At that time.
But now it is on a computer. So I am now going to welcome Ken. Now I'm going to try to turn on your presentation and share it. So.
And do I do all that wiggling
I hope not.
or just kids?
You should just be able to hit the down arrow. Let's see.
You'll trip where.
I know. Let's see it. Hang on.
Well,
one
I'm
second.
gonna thank Judy for the kind introduction.
There we go.
And this will be an improvement upon the October 8th presentation, which was at our 50th year celebration.
1 second.
At that time, we had just returned from the Grand Canyon, so I was barely able to pick a selection of the slides. And also, Jean mentioned this, remember the skylight during the day? We couldn't even see the slides. So this will be quite an improvement.
So you can just.
Here, let me click the first one.
I don't know what you said. Stop sharing automatically. Just really annoying. It's doing that.
If we really have problems, Dee could always.
We can get out the manual slide projector.
Yeah, could always help.
Okay,
But
let's try one and see how that goes.
yeah, let me just mention this first slide, which is Bear Valley in western Colusa County, will be repeated at the end. And at that time period, I'll tell more about it. So this is just our title page.
Here we go. Okay, so just, yeah.
So I didn't really see what you
It's
did.
not showing the share though.
This,
On Zoom? Oh, I'm not. Yeah. I'm sorry, Vivian, I don't know. what's going on.
well, this is actually number two.
Still not showing.
No, it's slow because it's a huge file, so probably you gotta work.
And maybe it,
And it's
I don't
about
think-
110
I don't think I'm in Zoom anymore. I'm not
images.
stable on Zoom. Vivian.
Okay, Dee, did you make that stick? Let's see.
I'm so sorry, kid.
I'm glad you
Well-
continued with that.
I'll be able to interpret really well if someone could, I feel very comfortable with someone running that.
USB? Yeah.
I think Vivian's gonna do it from there.
I think, well, let's see.
Yes.
What was the flower in that first slide?
Hey, that is a fritillaria. Fritillaria flora, the common name, adobe lily. And at one time, there were great masses in the Sacramento Valley, including both the east side, Vina Plains near Chico still has remnants, as well as Bear Valley, which is on the west side of the Sacramento Valley. So Bear Valley, which does have a degree of protection, is really one of the last major stands of that fritillaria. And it's a relative of Fritillaria liliaceae, the white fritillaria that we have at Edgewood. It's one of the clay-loving, sun-loving fritillarias.
Oh, wait, no.
And the other subgenera of the fritillarias are the shade-loving, like our mission bells or checker lily. And there's a number of woodland species. And we'll share some of those that we've seen on our field trips over time.
This is sharing now.
It is showing. Okay,
Yeah.
let's.
Ken, you can come over and look into the light, and I'll advance the slides for you,
Okay,
and we'll hope for the best, and I will.
so
I will.
this is good?
I'm still not seeing sharing. Are you guys at remote seeing anything? Seeing the slides?
Not yet.
No.
It does say that the host has started screen sharing. It just hasn't shown up yet.
It should work now. Yeah, I think it may be the size of this file.
All right.
I think
Yeah.
that's what's doing it.
So
Oh, yeah.
It's a PDF. I'm gonna start over with the PDF version.
Oh, right. That probably compressed
Yeah.
it.
Bear Valley up, when you say Bear Valley, I think of Emmett Path and Bear Valley.
yeah, this is low elevation in the coast range. Definitely not a ski area.
Oh, that's better.
What?
It's like saying Black Mountain. There's apparently that it does.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, we're gonna try it one more time.
I want to go there. I'm confused. That's pretty impressive.
This has been the
This-
bumpiest talk in 3 years.
Well, it's the first hybrid, so
Yeah, you're very kind.
we, Dee and I actually were up the North Coast chapter in Arcata in September, and they had the same issues. They actually had a hybrid meeting where the in-person part went perfect and the Zoom part didn't exist. So each of our chapters, our 36, probably go through this. And if we can get it down, I think you're gonna enjoy this evening.
Very good.
Since we have a minute, what was the new chapter that joined at the end of last year?
Gee, I don't know.
It's called Stebbins and it's actually Davis and Calusa and.
It's Colusa and Yolo County. It's a break off of Sacramento Valley chapter, so it's centered around the university. So,
Can let me ask you a question.
Michael,
Is that, those are all walls?
yeah,
That's bold.
every time it loads, it crashes. Can you see it?
Quickly or?
I
First
know.
differently, Or they go by?
Yeah, they have the
Just-
truth
Even
is
if you have the
axle,
same thing.
so they don't
Yeah.
spread widely. But the thing is, this
I
is
mean,
the
I can see
original
this something
population.
smaller.
And if you give a
Why
plant.
don't we just,
I think it's the size of the.
why don't we just
Tape it on the bulb, the
show
bulb,
it here?
as well as seed recruitment
I don't know
application,
about the Zoom, say-
especially after fire.
I'm gonna leave the Zoom.
You'll get populations like
I
this.
mean,
Okay.
But there are herbivores. In this picture,
So actually,
notice there's
Yeah,
some
just-
spots,
it actually
That- those
shows
are
like,
cattle.
but
and I was gonna
Saying you
leave
could see
my
it.
commentary for this shot.
it's backwards,
To
the words are
the end.
backwards, but they'll be able
But-
to see something.
What
Take
about
that
having
on that
this?
time. Never, ever seen it this good again. And cattle,
I mean, that's
uh,
what Judy's doing.
as you
But
know,
it's
bulbs
because
need to
it's
transfer
large.
the energy from chlorophyll down back into the bulb.
Yeah, she just can't
and
take
if
it.
it gets
That's
eaten,
what's larvae, not
Well, it gets weakened,
basically.
and over time, you know,
So now
the
we
cattle
have
are out
to
there
show
24/7.
something.
So
Freaks out.
Bear Valley is ranch
Have
land.
them talk
There
over
are
here.
conservation easements, not to develop it. But it doesn't restrict
I wouldn't
cattle
bother with
grazing,
Zoom,
those easements. So that is an issue. Some wildflowers actually benefit from cattle grazing. Some, but Fritillaria floriflora. But what's interesting, I will mention this, Walker Ridge is directly to the west. And Walker Ridge has a population much smaller, but it's viable because there's no cattle present. And not only that, we found out from Amy Patton, who's the rare plant treasure hunt, state CMPS, another population near Highway 20 and Highway 16, which is much easier to get to than Bear Valley. Bear Valley has a dirt road, and if recent rain has occurred, it's virtually impassable. So you really gotta pick and choose. Now, 1988, I was with Bart O'Brien when that photograph was taken. And that was a year, there was a lot of rainfall in the fall to about January. And then like last year, it got quite dry. And last year, Dee and I went around the American West for the genus Calicornis, the Mariposas, and geophytes, bulbs, tubers, rhizomes benefit from early abundant rainfall and store energy and actually flower very good because the bulbs are at depth and those areas don't dry out as quickly as maybe annual wildflowers like goldfields that have much smaller roots. And so 88 was a year like that, and we just hit it good. And you know, but don't hesitate to go out there. One of the things when I lead field trips, gee, you have these great years, and as a leader, you remember it, and then you bring the chapter, and it's not as good, and darn it, you get disappointed, and but that's part of exploring the California flora, and it's quite variable when you consider 40 years of exploration. So here's another question.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, what month was that?
Oh, so that was like March 10th. So Fritillaria in general, including at Edgewood, almost all of the Fritillarias in low elevation are very early flowering species, including Mission Bell's checker lily. They're in March. They're before the main sweeps of color from our annuals, like baby blue eyes, tidy tips, goldfields. They really proceed often by a month.
Since you're holding forth on Fritillaria, do the sun-loving ones do the same thing, or sometimes they'll just put up a flag leaf and not bloom one year, but they'll just throw out the leaf to store energy for the subsequent year, like the woodland ones do?
Yeah, not quite the same. The sun-loving Fritillarias actually have basal leaves as part of the stem leaves, and they'll often emerge without the flowering stem occurring. So they actually send out their true leaves. And one of the things about this, where the cattle grazing could be beneficial, the cattle grazing does remove the non-native grasses. And that's one problem with these sun-loving. Those basal leaves are right at the soil level, the first set.
So Ken, I could go ahead and just keep on moving through your slides, and if we manage to get it working more directly, but right now I think the remote people, can you guys see the slides? Oh, wait, maybe Dee's got it. Do you know?
Oh, my
Well, I
goodness.
could kind of talk free farm.
We noticed.
There you go. Oop.
Yeah, that was 40 years, and 10 minutes. Well,
Yeah, well, I don't know how everybody is hearing on there.
Okay, you're on.
Well, one thing I would, slide to, since we've heard about this, I would like to, thank my wife, Dee Himes. She did all the scanning, helped with the arrangement and the wording, and, well, on every field trip since 2014, we've been on together. So chapter field trips, one of the major points I would like to make, this is the Warburton Ranch. August Warburton, an attorney and chapter member, was asked by Jeff Caldwell in 1985. He was field trip chair. And we had a field trip to a private ranch. It's along Yagas Creek in the southwestern Santa Cruz Mountains on the east slope. Well, now it's part of Cañada de Oro Open Space Preserve. So that's one of the big differences. We got so many open space preserves now. Notice that trail. There were no signs. The scrub was not cut back. And if we didn't have, it was Austin Warburton. If we didn't have him leading us, we would have been lost immediately. So that was a big difference. And the thing is, if you know, Yagas Creek flows to the Pajaro River, and the next drainage to the south is Uvas Creek, Uvas Canyon County Park. And that county park's been around a while. I've led a number of field trips there too. Both are tributaries of the Pajaro River. And with that, let's go next. Well, first of all, Jeff Caldwell. He was field trips in 1985, has led a number of field trips to Stevens Creek, Coyote Creek, Riparian, and Jim Sagai. Jim Sagai, both long-term members, and Jim's no longer with us, but he led trips to the coast. He knew Al Smith, the founder of Orchard Hardware Supply, and we were over near Swanton, extreme northwestern Santa Cruz County. And do you know what that tree is? California nutmeg. Now we see California nutmegs on our field trips, scrawny little trees, like at Uvas County Park, Paquetti Ranch, small little, Jeff says, or it was Jim, he knew Al Smith. And Al Smith had a number of railroad cars, and we met Al in his caboose. Well, that particular ranch, Jim and Joanne Jagat led the trip, 1989. The CZU fire burnt the cars and much of the landscape. But Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, now owns the ranch. It's the Swanton Pacific Ranch, and they're working on sustainable agriculture and forestry at the location. Well, this California nutmeg, according to Jim, is a world champion.
Well, Ken, how hard was it?
How high? It's so if you ever been on Skyline to Sea, between Big Basin headquarters and Waddell, there's nutmegs all the way along, almost as big as this. But they're in full sun, it's probably only 70 feet high. But it's bushy, massive with spreading branches. Well, nutmeg, I always like to go on a field trip with new people. Shake hands with this redwood. It has very pointed needles.
Yeah, is it? So I think that's listed in the Big Tree Registry, I think.
Yeah, I think
Did
so.
it survive the fire?
Well, I actually don't know. So I'm not totally current. But next. Then in the year 2000, Stella Yang, who's on the audience, told us about a plant and actually took us after an Uvas Canyon field trip. And it's up Little Uvas Creek. That's a drainage in between Yagas and the main stem of Uvas. It's a private road. And the reason I have this in, for the viburnum ellipticum behind them, it's Stella that noted this, and it's a range extension. The first time noted in the Santa Cruz Mountains bioregion. It's a range extension from Mount Diablo. It is nowhere common in California, more common to the north in Oregon and Washington. It's our only native viburnum in California. Now with Arvin and Ashok, we've seen viburnums in the Himalaya, and they're more abundant in Eurasia and the East Coast. But nevertheless, there's a close-up. Now the leaves are opposite. At the time that we were collecting this, because the cuttings that Paul had were giving to the herbarium at San Jose State University. Notice the leaves are opposite. At the time, it was considered part of the honeysuckle family. But currently, it's now in Viburnum Acacia, transferred from Adoxaceae, which includes the elderberry, and that's a conserved family name. An earlier published name that didn't have priority, but they voted to conserve it. So there's a close-up. It's a deciduous shrub. So my very first strip, this is not only a history of chapter field trips, but in a way, my history. My very first trip, March 20th, 1982, to Edgewood. In the foreground, Leptosiphon parviflorus sweeps the gold fields behind. So this is early April. And next. And of course, Edgewood, San Mateo County acquired it in October of '79 with funding from the federal government, 50%, 25% from Mid-Penn, and 25% provided by San Mateo County Parks. But the idea was it was going to become a golf course. And the first chapter field trip was 1975 by Mabel Crittenden. And at that time period, the golf course issue hadn't surfaced. Mabel Crittenden is one of our original chapter members. She's the author of Wildflowers of the West. You can still sometimes obtain that book. And that was 1975. But notice the red circle. I didn't have an individual picture of Susan Summers or Suzanne. Here she is at our Yellow Star Thistle kickoff in 1999. Well, she lived nearby. She approached the president in 1977, Doug Erskine, telling about the threats to Edgewood. And she started leading the initial trips. And she was the person that led my very first trip. Anywhere in the chapter. Okay. On that trip was a young botany student from San Jose State University, Tony Corelli. And we have props. Tony, of course, is the author of The Flowering Plants of Edgewood. And she was, so that was 1982. She stepped forward in 1983, became vice president. 1984, president. And 1985, rare plants until, who knows, 2020. So she's contributed immensely. And one of the areas where she led field trips was San Pedro Valley County Park, as well as Calero, all throughout our chapter area. So next. And Tony, for Suzanne's mother fell ill, so she could no longer lead trips at Edgewood. So Tony took over, and for 4 times monthly, March through June, led all the docent trips. She was the only one doing it initially. For 4 to 5 years. Finally, like 1988, when the golf course issue really heated up, we got more people involved. and you'll hear the development. That's one of the dozen walks. But for really getting Edgewood preserved, the person in the center, we're back to Bear Valley a month later, and a whole different flora with star lily and actually an untidy tidy tips, the yellow flora. In the left, Elegiamusis, who was field trips 95 to 98. And to the right, Barbara Coe, who was our propagation workshop at Saratoga Horticulture Foundation before we had Hidden Villa, and Carolyn Curtis. Before she arrived as Conservation North, we had the Edgewood Park Committee, about 12 people. She, who is very politically astute, said we need a coalition. We got 39 different organizations together with a membership of like 1,200, if you totaled up all the organizations. And really, it still took quite a few years, 13 years before Edgewood was declared a natural reserve. Okay, next. So in 1987, when I was president, I asked Sally Casey and Lee Ellis to conduct a keen class. We had microscopes at Foothill on Friday evening, and the next day we went out to Edgewood. And of course, this would never happen today. You can't go off trail, and there we were picking samples. The key, boy, shame on us. Were we naive? But you know, we have learned by our mistakes. And one person, Nora Manette, has been long-term working with Peterson Middle School. She's one of the people in there. But next. And Sally, I didn't have a picture of Lee Ellis, but Sally, of course, led grass walks probably from 1972 all the way to 2018, 19. And she's on the right. And then Gene Struthers, we're in Keystone Canyon. Well, Gene's here. You'll see Gene again too. And Dave. And Keystone Canyon, East Mojave Natural Preserve. But Sally led grass walks. She, here's something I found out. From 1972 all the way through 1979, she was our first field trip chair. So she wore many hats. Next. And then, why is Edgewood, it took people to prevent a golf course, but it certainly was helpful to have endangered species. The San Mateo thornmint, the only place in the world that occurs naturally is Edgewood County Park and Preserve. It's in the mint family at Canthamintha. We knew it as Aboveda variety Duttonii at the time. Well, it's listed as federally endangered and state endangered. And by the year 2004 or so, it was down to 250 individuals. Stuart Weiss, who many of you know from Bay Checker Spot fame, Coyote Ridge, Edgewood, he's given presentations with Creekside Science, his company, and Crystal Meteor. We brought it up back up to 3,000 individuals and expanding in numbers. That's the San Mateo County thornmint. So that very first year, I was so enthusiastic. I have to go on all the field trips. Also in May, that was a big rainfall year. 81, 82, 36 inches in Belmont. 82, 83 was the actual El Nino year. And I went backpacking that year and walked on 8 miles of snowfields in Kings Canyon National Park in the Evolution Basin. These were just tremendous rainfall. And this is the Arnold Ranch and the fields. I forget the name of that canyon. We've been there.
Yeah.
But that's the name.
Is it? No.
Yeah,
It's on the ranch. If Stella was here, she would know. But there was tidy tips, Gilead tricolor, owl's clover. Just nice sweeps. So that's 82. So who led the trips next? Carl Sharsmith, Dr. Carl Sharsmith, Professor Emeritus at San Jose State University. From 1972 all the way at least to about 1991 or 92, led our most popular yearly trip, his trip to the Arnold Ranch and the Mount Hamilton Range. And of course, we do have to mention, it was Carl's wife that for her doctoral thesis conducted the survey that resulted in the flora of the Mount Hamilton Range. And we hosted the state board meeting in 1987, and the chair for publications, Harlan Kessel, was also associated with UC Press. And this is publication number 6. And Harlan, I remember him mentioning to me that this really got this effort really got the CMPS Publications Committee off the ground and resulted in many regional floras and books about native plants. One of the first, and Carl updated this because the original publication was the American Midlands Naturalist in 1940. So we had to bring the nomenclature, and that was our chapter's effort.
Fantastic.
So next. And we would go to the Arnold Ranch. Now, this is on the east side of Mount Hamilton in the valley of Arroyo Bio, and the second drainage east of Mount Hamilton, and of course, a huge valley. Now, the CSU fire of 2020, unfortunately, burned that wagon as well. The Oaks living, but destroyed the house that Fanny Arnold lived in during this time. Now, this is her son. Forget his name, but the Arnolds, it's actually Fanny Hastings Arnold. And if you know the Hastings Preserve in Carmel Valley, they're associated with the creation of that preserve. So there's Carl, the buck boy. Well, we would leave 8 o'clock in the morning and not get to the Arnold Ranch to about afternoon, 12:30 or so, hence the lunch. And we had stops all along the way at Carl's favorite places, such as east of Mount Hamilton, this rocky little slope. Next. An endangered listed plant. It's the rock sanicle, Saniculus saxatilis, in the carrot family. It's found in the Diablo Range, Mount Diablo, in the Mount Hamilton area. And of course, it lives in total screen, but it has little tubers, so it is a perennial.
Do you know they found it now in the Santa Cruz Mountains?
Yeah, I heard Mount Emmett now,
Yeah,
and that has scree too.
I know.
And of course, once you go Fanny Arnold's property or nearby, blazing star can be very abundant. You know, the there it is, the chapter logo, and on the newsletter. So equally harsh habitat, close up a blazing star and Clarkia brewerite. I have a photograph of Clarkia brewerite. I didn't include it because I couldn't find it, but Carl's bent down smelling it. It's one of the few Clarkias that's fragrant, and it is wonderful. For the longest time, the Mount Hamilton jewel flower was only known from Fanny Arnold's ranch. And we saw it a couple of years ago. It was during these drought years. It was highly stressed. Here it's about 3 inches high. That's Streptanthus in the mustard family. So then the first trip I ever led for the chapter, so I'm coming along, took 3 years to get up the nerve. With San Bruno Mountain. Well, I grew up near San Bruno Mountain, and when I was young, we used to call it the Black Hills. It would burn every year around 4th of July. And of course, there wasn't quite so much development, and every year black. Well, that's a colony of hummingbird sage. And do you realize that San Bruno Mountain is the only part of the Santa Cruz Mountains bioregion that has natural populations of hummingbird sage? So it's common in Monterey, San Luis Obispo, and Santa Barbara counties, and skips most of the Santa Cruz Mountains and reappears in San Bruno. So San Bruno, compared to Edgewood, which is often dominated by annuals in the grassland, annual wildflowers, tidy tips, etc. San Bruno is more dominated by perennials. For example, checker bloom, Sedalcia malviflora, Pastelea whitei, White's paintbrush, and cow parsnip behind, mixed in with Iris douglasiana, the Douglas iris. But there are unique plants, though, on the rocky ridges, the San Bruno Mountain manzanita, the Archistaphylos imbricata with the CD behind, very prostrate. It's one of 5 manzanitas on what we think of as a grassland mountain. Next. Now you can see why it got its imbricata, the Pacific epitaph. That refers to the overlapping leaves, like shingles on a roof. And this plant is endemic, only found on San Bruno Mountain, but it's part of a complex in the Santa Cruz Mountains bioregion. What are the other species? Archistaphylos monteraensis, restricted to Montero Mountain. How we different? Boy, we're going along. And then Kings Mountain manzanita, and then Andersonii, the Santa Cruz Mountains manzanita, down by Mount Madonna in Bonnie Doon. Next.
You're doing fine, Jen.
Okay, doing fine. So, off trail, especially the early days, this is Miss Maiden Ravine. Now, we don't often see Miss Maiden on our field trips. This is in the Hydrophalaceae, the waterleaf family, and this was the El Nino year. So the little gulches and gullies were running. Next.
Where was this located?
Well, this Miss Maiden Ravine is on the east side near Manzanita Dike. And on our chapter field trip, and we will have one to San Bruno this year, I point these areas out, but they're often Trillium Gulch is nearby. These are all named locations in the San Bruno Mountain flora of 1994. Currently, Doug, forget his last name, but, oh yeah, they spoke at our state board meeting. There's a new book on San Bruno Mountain that sometime will be for sale, I presume.
It is.
So there's a close-up of Miss Maiden. The other area I've seen it that we've been to is Pilocitos Lake in the Crystal Springs watershed. It's a perennial, as mentioned. Then Bart O'Brien, 1983. 1983 was our first members' night, and I presented a little section on Fritillaria. I forget what Bart presented, but that's where we met. And we collaborated on field trips, also individual tours. In fact, the tour up through the Siskiyou Mountains was our first potluck slideshow at our first potluck that Bart and I collaborated on. Well, where is this? This is San Benito Mountain, San Benito County, southeastern portion, probably 50 miles southeast of Hollister. We would meet Bart at his parents' house at 8 a.m. We would get to Tres Pinos, go to Pinoche Valley, fine plants, go down to New Idria, go back up to San Benito Mountain, get there at lunch, and then go down we explore the San Benito Range, go down the Clear Creek watershed, and as we were crossing the San Benito River, it was dusk. But Bart had additional plants to show. He said, get out the flashlights. In another mile, we had to see the prickly poppy. And of course, it's white, so it would reflect. Next. Yeah, this is the largest expanse of serpentinite in the South Coast Range with many unique plants. Next, that's the Clear Creek watershed. And of course, the ridges are very fine scree and sometimes coarse cobbles. Let's see what grows. The talus fritillaria, Fritillaria falcata. Bart would show us just a beautiful little species. And that's what I mean by those basal leaves.
Yeah.
Real low. Okay. Well, this is the 1987 trip and Carl joined us. But I also want to mention Stella collected for the Wildflower Show through the 90s with Kay Walker. And Kay Walker's uncle was Marcus Jones. Marcus Jones was the authority on the genus Astragalus with 200 to 300 species in the American West. And that was her uncle. She loved Bart's trip. The very first trip in 1983, there was only 3 of us. Well, 4 counting Bart. But Kay Walker was on every other one until Bart departed to Rancho Santa Ana Botanic Garden in 1990. And of course, Bart would, there's the Clarkia Brewery again. Nice to see. Next. Then we go through the Griswold Hills, very arid landscape on the west side of the San Joaquin Valley. And Calochortus clavatus pallidus. There's 4 subspecies of the clavate mariposa. And this, with those reddish anthers, very attractive. Then we've heard there's a new chapter, the Stebbins chapter. Ledger on the right. A very well-known geneticist from UC Davis. And the 2nd president of state CMPS, 1966 to 1972. In 1969, a roommate, I was at Cal Poly, mentioned, an eccentric professor is coming down to give a program tonight in the biology department. You want to go? So I actually became aware of CMPS in 1969, but it took me years to join and finally get active. Well, Ledger, eccentric, well, he actually gave the same program, Biological Islands, to our chapter twice. And also he led field trips, not only to the Inner Coast Range, which Sarah Timby, I think, arranged, but also to the Sand Hills in Santa Cruz County and a couple other places. So he gave talks, and he was stationed in Berkeley after retirement, and Davis. This yellow plant, Harmonia stebbinsii, was formerly Mattia stebbinsii, and it's one of our tar weeds of the inner North Coast ranges. There's other plants too. There's a Lomatium stebbinsii, and then my favorite, Lewisia stebbinsii on Hell's Half Acre. Oh, Marnardella stebbinsii, and well, anyway, it was a chapter member, Roman Gankin, who described as new to science, Lewisia stebbinsii, and that's up in northern Mendocino County. Now, on Ledger's trip, he's a geneticist. And he's trying to figure out these two Mariposas. They look somewhat alike. Well, here he is, a geneticist. This is what I remember. This is pretty funny. Bastards. No, he never could get it. It's a naturally hybridizing population. Death Valley and 1993, the Panama Daisy. Wow. There it is. This is an old, when I was president, the logo, the state CNPS. Now that Panama Daisy is restricted to the Panamint Mountains on the west side of Death Valley. And as you can see, it's huge. Very robust perennial with huge flower heads. Let's see that canyon, Wild Rose Canyon on the west side of the Panamints. Okay, actually there was 5 presidents in that picture. Let me show you one. This is Anita Jessie on my first San Bruno Mountain trip. She was president in 1977. She was the only person on the trip in 1985. Of course, it was raining, but that said something about Anita. She was a character. Next. And of course, on these really harsh slopes, many of our natives grow in very harsh habitat. Next. And these flower heads are up to 6 inches in diameter, with a pollinator on the disc flowers. Next. And on that trip, Brenda Butner organized it. Many of you know the Brenda Butner Memorial Lecture. Brenda followed me as president and also followed me as field trips. She was just a wonderful person, that very gracious, really welcoming to everyone, and receives credit for being a major driving force behind gardening with natives, the photo group. These were all things that the chapter developed in this era that we didn't have when I first joined. So that's why I asked myself the question, why field trips? Well, it was really the only game in town. We've come so much further in gardening with natives tours. And Judy Mason. Judy was our resident artist. She's on the back cover. This is her artwork on Edgewood, and this tote sack. This is her artwork. So Judy Mason passed away within the last year, but Don Mason was at our 50th year celebration, and I got to talk to them, and they were an integral part of our chapter over the years. Well, where we're at is Echo Canyon on the east side of Death Valley in carbonate rocks. Let's see what they may be looking at. Death Valley monkey flower, Mimulus rapicola, and it's growing right in the cracks. It's a perennial. But these are the cracks, probably a very deep root system, but of course water runs down these canyon faces to give it nourishment. And really 1993 was a big wildflower year. I was with Michael and Carolyn in 2010, and we went up Echo Canyon, and I couldn't find this. And you know, the desert really is a crapshoot. You either see them or you don't. You can't, it's not Edgewood. Oh yeah, we can go out and see it. Yeah, good luck. So when Brenda was president in 1989, we, myself and Bart, and also Sarah Timby, went over to the state board meeting in Lone Pine, California, under the shadow of Mount Whitney. And with that, we took some extra days, of course, And the reason this is significant, this is 1989, and we never had a field trip to return until COVID in 2022 in May. So you might say we scouted this years in advance. Well, that's Princess Plume, Stanley Empanada. Okay. And on that trip, this is pretty special. Some of the leading lights in the Native Plant Society. We got the flora with Mimulus rapicola on the cover of the Northern Mojave Desert. Mary de Decker, who lived 50 years in Independence in the Owens Valley, the foremost botanist of that area. Phyllis Faber, who was the driving force behind Wild Gardens, a living legacy. She was head of the publication committee. And all these sites and more in California are mentioned in this book.
She just passed away recently too. And all three of them are CMPF fellows.
Yeah, because the last one, Wilma Paulette, she was the poster queen. She shepherded all the posters, Wildflowers of the Desert, the Sierra Nevada Spring, and Phyllis and Wilma were with the Marin chapter, and Mary was with the Bristlecone chapter. And Wilma led trips for our chapter to Point Reyes and Mount Tamalpais, and we returned the favor and led a trip to Edgewood. And you know the surprising thing? They got excited to see Calicortus albus. And you know why? It doesn't occur north of the Golden Gate. Okay, next. So, if you go out in July and 100 degrees, which we did during COVID, Coldwater Canyon. There's a genus that honors Mary de Decker, Eurekaensis. And although she found it near the Eureka Valley, about 60 miles east of Big Pine, and probably 100 miles north of Furnace Creek, out in nowhere, you could go to the White Mountains near Bishop and just north into Coldwater Canyon, and you could see it on hills. It's a monotypic genus, the only species in the genus, and it's in the buckwheat family, and it's evidently a relic that isn't reproducing a lot of seed. Dedecora, do the little. That's compliments indeed. Okay, well, that's pretty special. You know, Stebbins has species named after the whole genus, especially this day and age. So, in 1989, we went to the Marble Canyon and Black Canyon in the southwestern part of the White Mountains. And notice there are cottonwoods and willows, pinyons upslope, not because we're looking west, but let's see what we found. Stream orchid, and that's a desert range. Epipactis. And then when you walk up the bank a ways, what's Bart looking at? Yeah, the scarlet milkfinch, probably the showiest of the genus Astragalus. Worldwide, there's 1,200 species, 200 to 300 in the American West, and several hundred, maybe as many as 800 in China and Central Asia. Beautiful plant. I was reading in Pacific Hort recently, and someone associated with Saratoga Horticulture Foundation who could grow this plant. It is a perennial. And they quizzed in the magazine, and then they published the results. And only one person, Boyd Klein, who was the owner of Siskiyou Rare Plant Nursery, got it to flower 2 years in a row. He was the only person that responded to the positive. There was all kinds of failures. So we didn't see any of those trips. Joe Cernak with the scarf was the main leader on that trip. And we did see, though, the other Stanley of the mustard family, the Panamint princess plume, which isn't near as attractive. You might call it the ugly duckling, but look at that view with the Sierra Nevada across Owens Valley. It just frames the picture, really. Okay. Carson Pass. Thanks to Jean Struthers and Joanne Jagat, Jean opened up her cabin, Jean and Dave, and Joanne her condo, where the ladies mostly stayed. We actually slept on the deck, I think, but we're hardy, we were young. Well, Carson Pass, that peak, Brown Top, and below it, Winnemucca Lake, a 4-mile hike or so there. That's Brenda, of course. You know, Don Thomas and his wife Julie, who was pregnant at the time, and Sonia Wilcomer, who for years ran our photo group. Okay, next. Well, below Round Top, that wasn't a big snow year. We go, what are these sheets of rose pink? There's Bart trying to figure it out. Next, it was the Sierra Primrose, and it was our only primula at the time, because the dodecathions, the shooting stars, were not yet moved to the genus Primula. Since then, we've been to Idaho, Primula parii, the Grand Canyon, beautiful plant. Bart tried growing it at Yerba Buena Nursery. He was the nursery manager with no success. It's an alpine species. Next. And of course, can you replace the mountains, the natural rock gardens? This is Mountain Pride, Penstemon Newberryi, variety Newberryi. Up in the Siskiyous, we have variety Berryi, the Joki down. Just a drift. Next. And in 1995, another big snow year, there's Round Top. This is July 21st to 23rd. Those primrose may be buried in the snow, north-facing slope, the full year. Well, we didn't head that region. We headed the opposite slope on the Pacific Crest Trail, and there's the group. And through the gap, I believe that's Don Mayo, you could just get a glimpse of Lake Tahoe. But these south-facing slopes were by and large free as snow. And let's see what I saw for the first time. An aster without a stem, the genus Tansendia, amongst the volcanic rocks of Carson Pass. And of course, you know, another reason it was snow-free, the salts and or andesites, whatever it was, are dark and absorb heat. Remember that in planning field trips. Tuolumne Meadows with Carl again. This is on top of Mount Dana, 13,000 feet near the summit, and we're looking at Sky Pilot, an endemic to the Sierra Nevada. Now there are polemoniums elsewhere. You may know Polemonium occidentale. It's called Jacob's Ladder. It extends from the Sierra all the way to the Rockies. Next. And Sky Pilot, you have to get up to about 12,000 feet even to see the plant. Not likely at my age will I see it again. But Carl, we joined him for 4 to 5 days, reserved the group campground in Tuolumne. There's Lindbergh Dome, and there's a carrots, Smithier, that he shared, but he also shared showing us his old boots that he had since the 1930s, his ranger hat. He was a ranger naturalist for over 50 years and loved Tuolumne. And he took us to some of his favorite places, like the Saddlebag Lakes Basin. And we're trooping along, a lot of different plants. But one of the favorites of Carl's was the white heather, Cassiope mertensiana. And of course, the ever-present pipe, taking a break, little white bells, the white heather. And this extends all the way to Alaska and possibly is circumpolar around the northern latitudes. So also on that trip was my co-chair field trips, Jean Sorensen. That very year, she was also my co-chair for the Foothill Wildflower Show. That era, Jean and Brenda were co-chairs of Foothill. These are big jobs. Looking for co-chairs, I can't emphasize that enough, because we all bring something to the leadership. That's her husband, Ralph. And of course, she was very involved also as an artist, Blazing Star Pictures, also the Edgewood Docent Program, and eventually became the chapter's historian. Then the desert. I failed to mention that Kathy Rose led the Carson Pass trip. Okay, next. Let's see. Kathy Rose. Anyways, well, there's a little book. Oh, yeah, here. So next.
That's what you're talking about, this one?
Yeah, that's Anza Borrego. We're underneath looking for a little shade. There's Paul at the upper end. Sally. I see Dave and Jean, George and Ellie, and Don Mayle and Carolyn. We don't know that center person. But Helen, remember Helen, Paul? Yeah, you guys probably carpooled together.
Carpool down to Mount Pino.
So there's Kathy Rose. She led trips for the chapter to Carson Pass, at least 2 years running to Anza Borrego. She was an English teacher in Santa Barbara. And the last trip was near Mammoth, and it was the Rock Creek area. And she's the author of the small tome, Rock Creek Wildflowers. That's Kathy Rose. And she would spend being a teacher every spring at Anza Borrego and was extremely knowledgeable. That's Senna Covesii. You may know Senna Armata. Let's see, I forget the common name of it. But it is just a massive yellow, where this is sort of a nondescript, but we see this less frequent. So it attracts our attention. Okay, and of course, even in drought years, the shrubs of the desert come through. The tuberosa, Justicia californica, the hummingbirds love it. Very beautiful. It's in the acanthus family. And of course, in good rain years, you can't beat the desert. The sand verbena, the spectacle pod, and the monkey flower above, not the monkey flower, the mustard family. And here, brown-eyed primrose. So pretty neat. Next. And of course, wildlife. Wildlife has its challenges, as Dee always finds out, to photograph. But the desert tortoise, it was actually starting to nibble on the desert dandelion, one of its favorite food sources when the annuals are abundant. And then Joe and Paul led trips to Mojave National Preserve in '98 and the year 2000. '98, we spent a lot of time in the West, but a storm was coming in, so we didn't explore. The Kelso Dunes are some of the largest dune expanse in North America. But next. But in 2000, we returned and we had much better weather. This shrub is Apache plume. Barely makes it into California, but extends all the way east to Texas. Saw it at the Grand Canyon. And of course, we also were finding, remember the desert mariposa, Kennedyi, var Kennedyi, var Munzii is restricted to the Panamint Mountains, and it's a bright yellow. This is really supposed to be vermilion. And of course, some of the desert annuals of the East Mojave, purple gnat, Nama. Now, Nama was formerly in the waterleaf family, and probably other opinions now place it in Namnaceae. And it's the type genus for the family. Yeah, that's purple gnat. So I carpooled with Jane, and she's a good trooper, doesn't mind deviating from the freeways. And we went to the La Panza range, which Michael knows so well. And we found the poodle dog bush, which has been merged into Areodicton. It used to be Turricula parii, and it used to be in Hygrophalaceae. Now these are all in Namnaceae. It's a fire follower. We went by there 10 years later, and there's not a trace of it.
Wow.
And it's a shrub. You gotta be careful because you can get an algae from the leaves. It's a very coarse, hairy, and so botanists had got it from examining herbarium specimens. So even dead and dried, it can still result as an allergen. Then down to Southern California, a trip I led in '95. This date, June 18th, if it was June 16th, it would be an entirely different scene, wouldn't it, Paul?
Yes.
Steve Buckout, we had a windshield, and he wrote on the windshield, you know how you do it with condensation, June 16th, 1995. Well, the windshield was covered with snow. It was crazy. I went right to the Forest Service because I'd left earlier, didn't have a clue. But 2 days later, there we are in t-shirts. The first day was a challenge. Let's see what we went down. So a wonderful vernal pool. So that was really great. Down Ningia Bella. Just a beautiful mass. And you need heavy rain. Tell us what you saw in 1996, Paul.
But,
Nothing. You saw a mud puddle.
yeah, this looked like the sky had fallen onto the ground.
So lovely.
You know, when you're good and lucky, but it doesn't extend forever, that's for sure. We saw Southern Calicortus on that trip, and one of the lesser was Calicortus pomeroy along Sesame Creek, Ventura County, and with that, wonderful forms of Anustis in every color in the rainbow. But nice. Now let's jump to Northern California. We're almost done, and we're almost at 9 o'clock. Mount Eddy. We may have been to Mount Eddy as far as an away field trip, more than any other location in California, at least for me, probably 10 times. A lot of backpacks, but our first trip, there's Mount Shasta in the background. This is Black Butte, I-5, a cinder cone that many of you would know when you're going north on I-5. That's when, this is actually September. Last year, Shasta didn't have a bit of snow in late August. These were the better years. In fact, 1993, we did a day trip to Mount Eddy, Sarah Timby arranged, and then we went to Cook and Green Pass in the Siskiyou Mountains, 3 days. Well, that year was a heavy snow year. In the background, the Trinity Alps, look at how much snow is on the north-facing ridges. Well, you know what that means? You see early flowering plants. Oh, that's foxtail pine the northern form, 300 miles to the south. So that's Valaforiana, Valaforiana. To the Kern River Basin, we have Valaforiana subspecies australis, the southern form. Really disjunct. Some of the early flowering plants just emerging. Drummond's windflower, just beautiful sweeps. We even saw purple and blue forms. That's a perennial. Next. Then Rich Robinson, I heard from him recently. He attended many field trips in that era, but on Mount Eddy, which is the highest peak in the Klamath Mountains, we have another sky pilot. And this sky pilot in the world is only found on the summit of Mount Eddy. Wow. It used to be merged with a polemonium from White Mountain Peak that only occurred on that peak 300 miles to the southeast. And it was called Polemonium chartaceum, but recent genetic work has proved this to be a new species, Polemonium ediens. Beautiful little plant. Then John Game, he did the photographs and some of the language, the wildflowers of Bear Valley, Colusa County, where we'll end up with the Fritillaria. But he's photographing a plant. He's from the Bay chapter. He was their field trips chair, and he gave us a program on the Klamath Mountains, one of our potluck programs. And of course, there's Gene, and I see Dave, I see Stella and Don. Oh, Cattle, yeah. That happened. We don't even have many.
Right out of Zoom time?
It's you, you're back.
Okay, let's go. Let's see what he's photographing. Okay. Hi, John. Philander's lily. It's one of 6 lilies from that area. We got Kalagii, pink. We got rubescens, pinkish. We got Borschtonianum, white, all from dry habitat. We got Philanderii from dry habitat. But then from the Darlingtonia fens, we got Volmeri, like a tiger lily. We got Wigginsea, which we saw during the thunderstorm, Carolyn. We didn't even get time to look at it. We got chased out with a horrendous thunderstorm.
Oh.
I know 6.
Not my machine. No, I think that's.
Well, just a few more, please, please.
This should not be connected to me. Yes.
Yours is the display.
Maybe we ran out of time. Well, what I was gonna show,
The recipe.
that was to the Smith River National Recreation Area, the year 2000.
You can continue to talk.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, you know what?
Maybe you could show everyone with that. But anyway, Radhika's son, here's the reason we want to emphasize it. Radhika's son has property near Ashland, Oregon, which is the Siskiyous. This is the western Siskiyous. It's a ways away. But Dee and I are actually going to be up in Southern Oregon this summer. And we'd be willing to lead a chapter field trip to that region.
Yours is, please.
And there's lilies. You go, when should we go? Because there's a lot of elevation difference. In March, you find the fawn lilies, the genus Earthronium, which John Game showed us at Mount St. Helena. That's the southernmost species. Otherwise, they're not found in the chapter area. Beautiful plants. The April, May is the main phloxes, silines, the masses. But there's a lot of perennials out there. In fact, I had to show you this other one. Let's see, where is it? Well, with this book, Siskiyou Sundays, sites all over the Siskiyous, rock gardens, penstemons in July. Then the lilies really are late July. So, you know, you do gotta pick and choose. Hence, we want to stay up there 4 months. But this is the geology. Oh, a hotbed for iris. That's why I can't give you the book full time. The iris book. So anyway, that's potentially the future. We would have shots. Paul, give us a little description of the farmlands. You were there. Let's have the audience participate.
That's what that should be gorgeous farmland, mixed with the, little bulbosas, and just, it was unbelievable. Where was it?
There we go. Said in Oregon. So the reason we're able to go there, it's part of the California Floristic Province. Okay, that's Belanders. That's a beautiful lily. Hummingbird pollinator. Okay, and then Jean, that's Sneaky Jean. She took some cuttings of this form of coffee berry and we sold it at the nursery for several years. Vivian says we don't have it. Another reason for a return trip. See, notice how green and lush and the leaves are different. It's a different subspecies. Really, Smith River watershed, but also the Illinois.
Do they come down as far as, Fort Bragg? Because they're, you know, the coffee berries there look weird like this.
Well, you know what's there too is Castera sagrada,
Oh,
Frangula persiana. But let's move on.
okay.
Yeah, you probably could. The fruits there aren't totally right.
It's not.
Well, it'd be nice to show $8 melon, because that has Darlingtonia fens, and it's very accessible. They even have a boardwalk. And there it is. The largest expanse of serpentinite and the parent material in North America. It's only 4,000 feet. That woodland is Jeffrey pine. If you know Jeffrey pine, Pinus jeffreyi, it's usually 6,000 to 9,000 feet in the Sierra Nevada. Well, on serpentinite in Southwest Oregon, it is restricted to ultimafic landscapes. Next.
What else?
And of course, the British love this plant as a rock garden plant. Lewisia cotyledon, var cotyledon, the Siskiyou Lewisia. It's actually flowering in my house right now. Just a beautiful plant.
The ones they sold at Summer Winds, they have been flowering for months. I don't know what they pimped them with.
You know, I think they responded to all the rain this year. You know, I really don't do anything to mine, and it's fantastic. And of course, you know where it lives? 90 inches of rainfall a year on average.
Yeah.
The Darlingtonia fens, the cobra lily. Notice there's seepage areas that run down the slopes, and it's frequent. And if you go there in August, it's full of gentians, blue gentians.
And this is the one I remember, you started at the top and and there were orchids out there.
Oh, well, let's,
And then at the bottom, you read butterworts.
yeah, well, this is not that one, because this is more trees, but let's see what might be associated. California lady slipper.
Like I said, orchids.
Yeah, they're actually pretty common. Okay. And then, you know, there's always the novelties, and in that region, this is a common plant. And not only that, it's a common plant in our area at Portola State Park, Big Basin, Mount Madonna.
Yes.
And fairly common. That's called cat's ears, Calicortus tomii, and it extends all the way to Washington.
Mount Madonna is the southernmost that. are-
Yeah, Mount Madonna, yeah, we're lucky, we get the southernmost population.
And that seems to be very, fuzzy. Is that, the variance in it? Or-
Yeah, well, it's one of the hairiest, except for Corulius.
And they hybridize. They hybridize, I think.
Well, speaking of hybrids, now Calicortus uniflorus is very rare in our area, but does occur near UC Santa Cruz. Also, it occurs in Bear Valley, but far from Calicortus tomii. But this one likes it wet, so it's on the margins of the Darlingtonia fens. Now, the fens have water running through them throughout the year. But then there's a gradation from totally saturated to moist to totally dry. And the totally dry has the tomii. The uniflorus is in the middle. Let's see. So that was a natural occurring hybrid defined. So, you know, it's just wonderful exploring all these unique environments. Next, and of course, it wouldn't be floristically important unless you had an endemic Calicortus. Calicortus howellii, which commemorates Thomas Jefferson Howell, a pioneer botanist who produced the first formal flora of the Pacific Northwest. And if I had brought another book, there's a book about my great-grandfather, Oxcart de Airplane. He was one of the founders of the Oregon Historical Society. He also had a printing business, and Thomas Jefferson Howell was quite poor. And he was my grandfather's printing business that printed that flora in around 1900, multi-volume. So I had an early connection, didn't know about it until much later, but the author that this Calicortus commemorates.
Sam, is that a California native?
No, it doesn't make it to California.
How close does it get? You remember that?
Yeah.
It's like feet away. from the
Darn
river.
close. Now, Ellie Hess, this is absolutely the last. Like Susan, I didn't have a photograph. She started the Edgewood habitat restoration, and there I am on the far. But she introduced us with Howard Drake to Snow Mountain. Next. Snow Mountain, which is eastern Lake County, western Colusa, and western Glen. The three tri-boundary is the summit. And what we have is Erysimum capitanum, the wallflower, the woolly sunflower, but you know, fritillarias, deer like fritillarias, and at Edgewood, they walk the trails and they often don't fruit or even flower because they eat the flowers, those deer. Now, the thing is, if you're growing in a shrubby mass like that, you have a chance. And this is what we saw. Fritillaria recurva, the scarlet fritillaria. And then it's very easy. You backpack into Snow Mountain about 4 miles, and this is the east summit. You can walk for miles. It's wide open, screen, and there's the west summit. And this towards the end of June, and you can see why it gets the name Snow Mountain. Let's see what grows on the screen. Nether fritillaria. Fritillaria glauca, sometimes known as the siskiyou fritillaria because it extends into southwest Oregon. But again, these harsh substrates, very little soil. And other plants, lobs, buckwheat, Eriogonum labii, just blends in totally with the screen. And many of these plants are real low and prostrate. They make excellent rock garden plants. And one that I love, that I took Dee to see, the serpentine milkweed, also almost prostrate.
What I like about that one is you get 10 feet away and you can't see it unless it's flowering.
Yeah, these are challenges. That's why you gotta roam at will. We just, on those field trips, we send everyone out. Now, Gene Struthers and Paul were on the very first, well, not on the 89, but the 96. Remember, Gene? You and Dave were along. I got photos. And now the last shot, the fritillaria, now you can really see those basal leaves. So they come up, even if it doesn't bolt and produce flowers. And this is the last. Well, you notice on our letterhead, preservation of California flora, and there's certainly issues, but we're the only organization that really speaks for plants. We collaborate with many other organizations, but as I mentioned previous, Bear Valley is still not developed, but I've never seen these fritillarias as a mass like this again.
From grazing, you said?
Well, primarily grazing and the cattle in the background. There's no fences in between. So, you know, it's not heavy pressure, but in 40 years, you know, the old adage, but I won't say it. So let's look at the last slide. In the year 2000, when we could do these things, we had local field trips to some of the hospitals. And this was to the Montera Lighthouse. Tony led trips to rare plants along the coast. And we also had a Sunday trip to San Pedro Valley County Park. Well, on February 26th of this year, we'll return, not to the lighthouse, but to San Pedro Valley County Park. And Dee and I will be leading the trip. So you're all welcome to join us. Thank you.
George wants to speak?
Yeah, so you want to end the share and then she can get the Zoom on.
Okay, well, go ahead and speak,
Do you
George.
think this year would be good in Bear Valley? With all
Could
the-
be. Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead. Georgia, do you want to speak?
Yes, thank you, Ken. That was a fabulous presentation. Thank you so much. I'm speaking now because I'm going to fulfill a promise that Dr. Carl Sharsmith extracted from me many times. He implored me to always tell people, because he knew I would outlive him, of course, we all did, that number one, his former wife, Dr. Helen Sharsmith, was a much better botanist than him. And number two, he always said that she made organic chemistry look easy, except for him, it wasn't. So thank you for letting me fulfill my promise tonight.
Yeah, very good.
Thanks, Georgia.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on Zoom? Or anyone else?
Norma Jean says, wonderful, such a treat. Thank you, Ken, and everyone who worked to make things work tonight.
Any other questions? Comments or no?
Norma Jean.
Well, Ken, this was the 20 years, 1982 to 2002. So 2002 to 2022, is that, are you working on it?
Well, 1999, I took over Edgewood. And I have the weeds documented.
Oh, here we go.
But I have a gap. And I wasn't able to go on yours, like to that Spring Valley or, you know, that when you help with the rocks, the wilderness. Yeah, Golden Valley. Yeah, I didn't go on any of those. So I have a big gap. So hence those years. So you have photos.
Okay, I have some, well, not too many.
Well, we'll have to work at it, because it is a significant part of the chapter's history. That, I think you will agree. Yeah. You're welcome. It's been fun to do this.
I just want to say, if anybody wants to donate books for the wildflower show, I'm gonna sell you books, let me know. All right, so, Cindy, do you want to close it?
Yeah, I'll close it up. So thank you, everybody who dialed in and stayed on, and thank you, everybody, for coming. We do clean the room up, so if anybody wants to help us put chairs and back in the closet, we'd appreciate it.
Will this be the first of many?
Yeah, I think we'll, yeah, this seems like it worked. We had a few little gadgets, but